Hello everyone, my name is Cindy Winget, the author of The Apparition, and welcome to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be doing my June wrap-up. So I'm going to start out with the ones that I don't have copies for so that I remember to put their covers on the screen. So I got this first book from the library. It's called The Girls Before by Kate Alice Marshall. And this one I did enjoy. I do remember liking it, but at the same time, because it's the first book I read this month, it took me a minute to even remember what it was about. Like I had a vague thought about the premise, but more from like the synopsis rather than actually reading the book. So obviously it wasn't that memorable, but then as I sat there and kind of thought about it, it kind of came back to me and I was like, okay. So not super memorable of a thriller, but I did enjoy it. I did like it. And I do think it's worth your time if you just want a popcorn thriller to hurry and read in the summertime if you're out on vacation or something. And if you don't know, this is about this woman whose best friend disappeared and she wants to know what happened to her. And for years, she's been trying to figure out what happened to her friend. And then in the modern timeline, there's another teenager that goes missing and she wonders if it has any kind of connection to her friend from 20 years ago. But mostly she's just concerned about this new person because it reminds her so much of her friend, and she's part of like a rescue group that tries to find lost people. Normally when they find them, they are unfortunately deceased, but she's always hopeful that she's going to find and rescue somebody that's still alive. And I would probably give this one 4 stars, even though it's not super memorable. I do remember liking it quite a bit. And then I read The Breakup Retreat, and this is a NetGalley arc that I got for free, and I'm glad I got it for free. Okay, so first of all, I'm sorry about the noise. It's summertime, so kids and dogs are going to be running around playing, so forgive me if you can hear that in the background. I'm glad that this NetGalley arc was free because unfortunately it didn't really work for me. It was okay in the beginning, like the setup was pretty good. We have this retreat where you go and there's this psychologist that's supposed to help you get past your past relationships and help you figure out why your relationships fell apart and convince you that you deserve love and all the things. But our main character thinks that she is not actually helping people, that she's actually making people's trauma worse, and that she's not a good psychologist, and she's a journalist, and so she wants to blow the lid off of this retreat and prove that it's more harmful than helpful. So I thought the setup was really good, and I was enjoying the story for the most part for the first half, but in the second half I find that I just didn't really care. You have this woman who disappeared at this retreat, but you don't know anything about her, and so there's nothing to go off of to care about her disappearance. And while I found the conversations with the psychologist pretty interesting, there wasn't any really suspense outside of that. I mean, a little bit, but not a whole lot. And then in the second half, I'm not gonna tell you which character because I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, but one of our characters that seemed pretty clever and strong in the second half turned into this like bumbling, whiny, weak woman, and it just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. It was just such a shift, you know, it just seemed so out of character and so out of left field, and I just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. But yeah, by the end of this, I just didn't really care, and that's the sad part, is this is just a mediocre, middle-of-the-road thriller. I mean, I know I kind of said that The Girls Before was like that, but The Girls Before was a lot better than this one, in my opinion. So if you're going to have a popcorn thriller, I would suggest that one over this one. So I would probably give this 3 stars, you know, because it was just okay, but not terrible. I mean, the writing was good and everything, and I'm sure for some people it will work, but for me it was pretty mediocre, so that's why I give it 3 stars. And then I received another NetGalley arc called The Mashup, and this is a rom-com, and I was very, very excited for this one because this is about the game MASH. If you grew up in the 90s, you know what I'm talking about. I used to love playing that game in elementary with my friends. The premise of this book is this woman, she has this game of MASH that she played when she was a kid, and on her 35th birthday her friend shows it to her and is like, oh, remember this MASH game? And you know, she kind of teases her for some of the things on there, like her tie-dye Jeep, and she has 2 pools and 13 fish and all this crazy stuff, you know. But it said that the person that she was going to end up with was this guy that is her brother's friend and has been in her life, but they're not really friends. She claims that she doesn't like him, but you never really see that animosity really, other than it just being stated. Like, oh yeah, him, I don't like him. Ugh. But you don't really have any good reasons why she feels that way, which is one thing about this book that I didn't love. But anyways, her friend's like, oh, you were supposed to end up with him. And she's just like, oh yeah, it's just a stupid game, you know? But she starts thinking about this game of MASH, and her boyfriend just broke up with her. She's turning 35, and she feels like, you know, her life is kind of falling apart at the minute. And so she thinks about this MASH game, and she thinks, you know, I want to be that person again. I wish I was a child and had the same crazy, wacky thoughts and feelings that I did back then. And so she blows out her candle, and of course the next day she wakes up and she is living the life from her MASH game. So the premise is super cute, super fun, but the execution of this one just didn't quite work for me. Like I said, one of the problems was she supposedly has an animosity towards the main love interest, but you don't really feel any of that. You're just told that a couple times without any kind of context. And then I just like it when books have like a guy that they've known their whole life or whatever, or somebody that they're supposed to not like. But then when it's time to get the romance going, you know, very, very early in the book, there's this instant physical attraction to them. And I'm just like, I don't buy it, because why wouldn't you have noticed that before? Like, just all of a sudden, out of the blue, you're having all these sexy thoughts about this man that you previously didn't like. And so it just doesn't seem real or believable that she never would have noticed that he was attractive before now, just because she's in this alternate reality. So I don't know, I just wasn't buying that. And then there just wasn't anything about the relationship that made it swoony for me or made it interesting. There was no banter, there was no chemistry, there was no tension. There was just, I'm in this alternate reality and I would like to leave, but I kind of want to stay because I'm falling in love with this guy type thing. But you know, that's really all it was. And so that just wasn't as interesting as I was hoping or expecting it to be. And so I just wanted more from the actual relationship and more from the romance. I just feel like they got together way too quickly and way too easily. This book doesn't have a lot of spice, which I appreciate. I'm not really into reading sex scene after sex scene. But at the same time, I still need to have like the sexual tension, or I need to feel the chemistry. I need to feel, or like the angst and the longing or something, you know? I just didn't feel anything. It's just she goes into this other realm and she says, oh, wow, I didn't realize he's so hot. And then, ta-da, I'm in love with him. Like, I don't know. It didn't really work for me. But I didn't hate it. I really didn't. And it was well written for the most part, so I would probably give this 3 stars. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing the rest of these books in order that I read them, starting with Memoirs of a Household Demon. And this was a book that was gifted to me by my friend for Christmas, and I'm just finally getting to it. So this just didn't seem like something for me. I'm just not really into urban fantasy that much, and like based on the cover, I don't know, it just didn't seem like something that I would be super interested in. But you know, she would text me and be like, oh, have you read it? Did you like it? Type thing. So I kind of felt obligated to read it, and I'm really glad I did, because I actually ended up enjoying this way more than I thought I was going to. Our main character is this demon, and it's kind of like the demon and angel on your shoulder, you know, where one's whispering to do bad things and one's whispering to do good things, you know, and he's the devil in that scenario. And so him and this angel have to coexist, and they have like their assigned human that they're supposed to be swaying either for good or for bad. But you know, he kind of starts to realize that maybe he wants to be good rather than evil, because there's certain aspects about it that he enjoys. There's an angel next door, and his neighbor's angel, I should say, and he kind of peeks in the window sometimes and watches her, and there's certain things about her that he likes, but not like in a romantic way, because she's actually the grandmother of the neighbor's daughter, and so she's come back as like a guardian angel for her daughter and her grandchild. But she was already married, you know, obviously, since she has kids and grandkids, and so it wasn't like a romantic thing. But she would like sing to her grandchild and stuff, and he would like to voyeuristically watch in the window and listen to this heavenly music, you know, and it would stir feelings in him or whatever. So then he kind of wants to jump ship, basically. But yeah, this was just really fun. At times, the funny aspect was a little bit cheesy, you know, because they were trying to make the dialogue a little bit funny. But sometimes it genuinely was funny. I really liked his dynamic with his angel and the way he would tease him and try to get under his skin and stuff. And I don't know, I just thought this was really fun and really well done. And it does have depth and emotion to it. This isn't just a lighthearted, funny, ha-ha thing. I mean, it kind of starts out that way. But as you get deeper into it and stuff starts happening, It really is very emotional, and I actually got teary-eyed a few times. But yeah, I just really liked this one a lot. This is actually the first of a series. I don't think I'm going to continue on, though. I feel like it wrapped up well enough that I don't really have to, and I just don't know if I want to continue on. But this was a very solid read, and I was really, really happy to support this author because he is self-published, and I'm always glad to support a self-published author like myself. And so I'm just really happy that I read this, even though it was out of my comfort zone. So I don't know if I would give it an exact 5 stars, but I think I would probably give it 4.5 because it was pretty close to a 5 stars. It's kind of funny because he's essentially self-published this book because it was too like religious for the non-Christian publishers, but a little bit too edgy for the Christian publishers. And so he's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to self-publish it then. But anyways, I enjoyed this one. My camera was falling down. Oh, it's doing it again. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So the next book I read is called A Secret Princess, and this has been on my shelves for a couple of years now, and so I'm very happy to finally get to it. So this is a mashup between The Secret Garden, A Little Princess, and Little Prince, what's it called? Little Prince False Leroy. So that last one, the False Leroy one, I have never heard of that story before. I didn't know she wrote a story called that. So that was fun and interesting. So in this one, I really did enjoy it. I loved being back in the past. You know, I enjoy period pieces like that. But as I got more and more into this book, I realized that there's not too much of a plot. It's more like something bad happens and then they respond to it. And then something else bad happens and they respond to it. Like it's more almost like a slice of life rather than having any kind of actual plot. But I did enjoy it. I feel like it was a little bit long. It could have been a little bit shorter. And there was a fun cameo at the end because these two authors also wrote a different story together. And it was, what's it called? Something about Joe. But anyways, they wrote another book together about the Little Women, and Joe March makes a cameo appearance in the end of this, and so I thought that was pretty fun. So yeah, not like a new favorite, didn't blow me away, but I did enjoy my time with it, and I would give it 4 stars. And then I read The Dreadfuls, and this is one of my most anticipated books because I read The Resurrectionist by this author, I believe last year, and it was one of my favorite reads of that year. And so this also takes place in Victorian England, but this is about Jack the Ripper. And I do love books about Jack the Ripper. And this actually reminded me a lot of A Little Princess. And so reading them back to back was a little bit surreal because you have 2 girls and a boy that are all friends, and the girls are in like an institute for girls. And then you have like the matron or whatever you want to call her. And, you know, both being set in Victorian England, it just very much felt the same, except obviously this one's darker and more macabre, and that one's more like cozy and lighthearted. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it lighthearted, but more so than this one. But it just had that same setup, that same feel to it, and so it was kind of like, oh wow, I'm like reading the same book but slightly different. Whereas in that one they have Miss Minchin, which if you've seen the movie A Little Princess or read the book, then you'll know she's like this evil witch of a lady. And then this one you think she's going to be like that too because she's very strict, but she's more of like a McGonagall or a what's her name from Anne of Green Gables, Marilla, where they're kind of gruff and grumpy, but at the end of the day they are good people, and so she's more like that. And so you have these 2 girls that are a little bit rebellious for the time, and their room is up in like the attic, and so they've found a way to climb up onto the attic roof and they can see all of London, and that gives them a good advantage point for seeing that, you know, maybe murder is afoot. And they think that, hey, with our hideout up here, maybe we can track him and maybe we can stop this murderer before he murders more women. So that's what they aim to do, is to try and figure out who Jack the Ripper is and stop them. Very enjoyable. I did like this one a little bit more than A Secret Princess, so I gave that one 4 stars, so I guess I will give this one 4.5. And then I read My Husband's Wife. Everybody has been talking about this thriller and saying how good it is, so I was very excited to finally get to it, and they're not wrong. I really enjoyed this one. This was my first 5-star read of the month, so I was very excited. So at first, one of the point of views I wasn't completely into because this is 2 people's perspectives. Well, that's a lie. It's not just 2 people. There's like a number of people, but the other girl perspective, I should say, at first I didn't really like her because she was very crass and grumpy and unlikable, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to want to read from her perspective. But she grew on me, and I grew to actually really like her and enjoy her. And this book had so many twists and turns and things. You think it's very predictable, you think you know what's going on, but you don't. And then inside of that, there's just little shocking things that would happen throughout, and it was just very fun. And because of the way that it would twist and turn, this reminded me a lot of reading Riley Sager. So if you're a Riley Sager fan, then I think you would enjoy this one. I had a really fun time with it. And then I read Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang, and I really did enjoy this one a lot. Not a 5-star read, but I did enjoy this for what it was. But I was surprised about the supernatural aspect to this, because that's not what I thought this was. I don't know what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be more like a serial killer book, because you have these Chinese women who are being murdered, and then there are bats that are found left at the crime scene, supposedly by the killer. And so I just thought it was going to be about catching this killer, but it's really not about that. And our main character was also a surprise, because I don't know, when I read the premise, and she's like one of these people that clean up crime scenes, they're the one that come up and mop up the blood and all that stuff, I just had a different thought of who I thought she was going to be and what her personality was going to be like. And she was completely not at all like I thought she was going to be, but not in a bad way. Like, I didn't dislike her or anything. I was just like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. And this is very character focused, I would say. Like, it does have a lot of horror elements, it does have a lot of gore, but it is very much rooted in our main character and her trying to deal with the death of her sister, who was pushed in front of a train because she's Chinese, because this is set during COVID, and people would call them bat eaters because the disease came from bats over in China, and so they're like, it's your fault, and so it led to all of these hate crimes and people being mean to them and stuff. And so this is kind of her response to that violence. And then now cleaning up crime scenes, there's all of these Chinese women that are dying, and so there's a lot of commentary in this about that. That's, I would say, what the theme of this book is just, the horror. You have like the horror element with the actual horror, but then you also have the real people horror, which usually makes for the best horror books. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I do like books that are a little bit more nuanced. This one just made it sound like every person is bad. There wasn't a single non-Chinese person in this book that was a good person. So I don't know how I feel about that, but at the same time, if you really want to drive home a theme, then I guess that's the way to do it. But I don't know, I prefer a little bit of nuance and a little more reality. But I understand what she was trying to do, though, and trying to show and prove that hatred and that racism. But yeah, I really did enjoy this one. I thought it was really good. It's pretty short, so I was able to read it pretty quickly, and I liked all the Chinese lore and all the stuff I learned about their culture. I thought that was really fun. And then I read Her Last Breath, and this is another one of my most anticipated books, and also ended up being a 5-star read. So yay! I'm so glad I loved this one, because I thought it was so good. So I have actually been in caves. Like, I'm not a spelunker, I'm not a caver or whatever, I don't put on the harnesses and go down the walls or whatever, but I have been to a few like cave tours. And so when I'm reading this, I can picture what she's seeing. I can, the sounds, the smells, the feeling, the coldness, like I can feel all of that because I've had that experience. And so it really led to a more closer experience. I don't know if that's the right word, but I was able to put myself in this setting, and that made it that much more scary and suspenseful. And then it's kind of funny because near the beginning of this book, they do have to rappel down this sheer wall to get down to the bottom part of the cave. And the whole time I was reading this, I was remembering a time when I went to rappelling as a teenager and I got my hair caught in the rope. I did bring a hair tie and I was going to pull it back, but there were guys there too, and I didn't want to have a big crimp in my hair because I wanted to still be pretty because I was a stupid teenager, so I didn't pull my hair back. And yeah, my hair got caught in the rope, and so the guy had to like rappel down next to me and yank out a big tuft of my hair to get me loose. And this scene in this was like exactly what I experienced. She was talking about like her neck being twisted and it would get tighter if she tried to move, and she had to rip out a big chunk of her hair. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is exactly how it felt for me and exactly what I went through. So that was really surreal, because there's not a lot of times when I read a book where there's an experience that is just like what I went through, other than like normal stuff like, oh, I've been through grief, or I've had a first love, or, you know, like mundane, normal things. But there's not very often that I'm reading a book and I was like, hey, I had that exact same experience, you know? So that was kind of fun and interesting. But yeah, this one was a fast bullet train of a book, and it never really slowed down. It just went, and it was so scary and so suspenseful and so good. There was a big twist, and I was kind of meh about the big twist, because it's a twist that I've seen done many, many times at this point. So I'm just like, whatever. Like, okay. So that one didn't like wow me or blow me away or anything, but I don't need to have a big twist in order to enjoy a book. Like, if it can genuinely shock and surprise me, it is fun, but it's not necessary for me to enjoy the book. You know, I didn't need that twist. And there was other little tiny twists along the way that I probably should have seen coming but didn't. So either way, I felt like this was really, really fun and really, really enjoyable, very suspenseful, very scary, very claustrophobic. If you're claustrophobic, this is going to scare the hell out of you. Just saying, if being in caves scare you, this is going to scare you, because it has all the vibes and all the atmosphere of being deep, dark into a cave. And one thing I will say though is they talk about a certain cave formation. I can't remember what it's called right now, but you know, you have like the stalactites and the stalagmites, but then there's a third one. I think it starts with a T, and instead of going down or up, the formations kind of go like all different directions, and they make it sound like this crazy, wild, wondrous thing, which it is. I'm not saying it's not, but you know, he makes mention in the book that it's this great mystery of nature and nobody knows how they're formed and blah blah blah, and that's not true. If you can look it up for yourself, but we do know why formations do that. And I live near a cave called Tupinauga's Cave, and we actually have those formations because they're not very common and they're not in very many caves, but I was just lucky enough to be able to see those in real life. And so I don't know, it just wasn't as mystical and mystifying as they wanted you to think in the book, but it really doesn't defy gravity in a mysterious way that you don't know. Like, I don't know. Wild claim, I guess, but at the same time adds to the vibe, adds to the atmosphere, so I'm okay with that. But either way, this is a really good survival story about trying to get away from a murderer, and I loved it. So our last book is called The Glowing Hours, and this is essentially about this woman who came over from India to find her brother because she needs to give him the piece of paper that says that he's inherited all the money after their parents have passed. And so she comes to America to find him, or no, not America, sorry. She comes to England to find him, and she can't, and so she is forced to find a job so that she can pay for passage back to India. And so she gets a job as a maid working for the Shelleys. So she is with Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley and Lord Byron and Claire when they're in Geneva during that famous summer where she came up with the idea for Frankenstein. So this book is very well researched, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it because I do like history and I do appreciate that. And it had kind of had that voyeuristic feel to it, like when you're reading or watching The Talented Mr. Ripley, where you're in this exotic place and there's these artists just hanging out and writing, and you know, and you're kind of just like Tom, where he's just kind of there, you know, to kind of show their lifestyle and show this idealistic view of their lives. She's kind of more in the background as opposed to an actual main character. She's the maid, you know, she just hears conversations and watches them and stuff, and kind of is just the catalyst for us to watch things unfold. But because of that, I don't know, I started losing steam halfway through. It started to get pretty boring and I was ready for things to start popping off. You know, I'm like, where's the horror? And so I even had to look it up because I'm like, is this just purely historical fiction? Which is fine, but I thought it was a horror, you know, where's the horror? But no, they said it was actual horror. So I was like, okay. So it does eventually get to that horror, and it does go balls to the walls like crazy and stuff. But at the same time, I didn't love it. I'm sad to say. Like, I enjoyed the thought behind it and the psychology behind it and how it would lead Mary Shelley to write about the themes that contributed to Frankenstein. Like, all of that was very interesting, but the execution of it just wasn't really my favorite. Things went so slow and then almost too fast, and just the way it was written and the way it was done, I don't know, it just was too fever dreamy, and I wasn't really into it, and I was kind of just like, okay, I'm ready for this to end. So unfortunately, I really ended up not really liking this, and I'll probably only give it 2 stars. So that's it. That's all the books that I read this month. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you had a great, enjoyable 4th of July if you're in America. And if you did like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.